I didn't grow up in church, but at a very young age, we lived in a house that was catty-cornered to a Baptist church. And I used to ride my bicycle through the flower beds, and the pastor came out one time and invited me to come into church. But when he had initially come out, I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble, but he didn't say anything about me, running over all of the flowers. And so my mom, I told her I wanted to go to church, and she put me in a dress and watched me walk over to the church by myself. And I don't even know what age that was. It was before she got sick. And so I guess maybe 6 years old, maybe, I started going to church by myself at this old Southern country Baptist church. They would kind of invite me in. Vacation Bible School was a really big one where I got to know the Lord kind of more on a personal level. I stayed in and out of that church all the way up through junior high, up until my mom passed away when I was 15. And so I started attending the youth group and was just pretty active. I got baptized when I was 13. I actually, felt the calling to be baptized and really understood the gospel for what it was. But it was also hellfire and brimstone. So I felt like everything that I did was wrong. And then when my mother passed away, I completely turned my back on God because, obviously at that age, it's like if you're going to take my mother, like, what do I really want to have to do with you? So at that moment, at 15, leaving the church and turning my back on God and openly, telling God that I was done with him, sent my life into a tailspin. I started coping with my mom's illness and the broken home and all those things. I had my first drink at 10. So I was already using alcohol well before my mother passed away and things had happened. So, and it was one of those things that it's like I was running around partying, doing all of these awful things, and then going to church on Sunday and really feeling like, like the worst of the worst. So the alcoholism, completely took over at that point. I was 100% using alcohol every single day to mask the feelings of the grief. And so, from 15 up until 23 years old, I chased alcohol especially, but I started using methamphetamines around the age of 18. And so the first time that I used meth until they carried me into a rehab, I chased that drug every single day, day in and day out. So that was my drug of choice, but I did every single drug that there was at that time.
What saved
you? It was God. I lived hell on earth, and so I was face to face with the devil a lot. And so before my mother passed away, she wasn't religious, but she was very spiritual. She's the one that taught me how to pray and, how to love God and have a relationship. And so before she passed away, she would always say, God will never give you in a day more than you can handle. And I guess at that point I'd already known who I was, and I'm like, okay, but what if I give myself more in a day than I can handle? And she said, I'll send you butterfly kisses from heaven. So I was deep in my addiction, and it's back when there was caller ID. And so I was deep in my addiction, and I was in a house where only drugs were being filtered through there. The phone rang and someone said, who knows Joe Collins? And that was my aunt. And I'm like, what? It's my mother's sister. So I grab the phone and I run out of this house, and she's like, I just had a dream. I have no idea where I called or what's going on, but your mom told me butterfly kisses. I just came to an absolute hopeless state of mind and body, period. And I reached out to my aunt again and found out that I had a cousin that was working as a drug counselor in San Angelo. It was a city that was kind of close to where I was at. And so they set up an appointment. I went over there, and within 20 minutes of being in the office, I was in a full-blown withdrawal from the drug addiction. It was an abstinent-based program, 12 steps, Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole thing. And so once you get to the third step prayer, you turn your will and your life over to the care of a God of your understanding, right? And so I wasn't okay with that, because I was still very mad, at God, because not only did you take my mother, but look at all the things that I've been through, so in this distorted belief of who he was. And so I kind of worked on this third step prayer that have people from outside, like sponsors, come in and work with you. And finally, one of the sponsors is working with me. She's like, just go in your room, get on your knees, say the third step prayer, and just leave it alone, And I'm like, fine, whatever, So I go into the room and I get on my knees and I say the third step prayer, and I feel God's presence wash over me. And I was still very angry, but through working the steps and being with sponsors, and finally somebody along the way was like, write a paragraph every year on your sobriety date of who God is to you, so that year I wrote like maybe 2 sentences. I'm 17 years in, and the last couple of times I've sat down to write who he is, I have to stop myself, because, we're 10 pages in on his grace and his mercy and how wonderful he is, Once I got to Kerrville, I went to this lady that owned a sober living called Precious Pebbles, and I begged her to let me stay there. And she's like, I don't have a bed, but you can definitely sleep on a floor. Well, I've been homeless, and I'm still homeless at this point. And so I'm like, sure, I'll sleep on the floor. So I paid her, got a job, I got a job, started paying her, and paid to sleep in this corner of the sober living house. And about a month in, they finally came in and were putting some bunk beds in. So I got me a little bunk bed. Well, in treatment, I met someone. And so that's never a good idea. But, we had a huge trauma bond. Like, I know that today. We got married and we had Nevaeh. It was 5 years of domestic violence and drug addiction and all these things. And I stayed sober, and I stayed sober. He didn't. It was really bad. And I just felt like he was going to kill me and Nevaeh. And so I went into hiding, and I filed a protective order and filed for divorce. And 3 weeks into that, he committed suicide. So, here we are, like, in sobriety, and everything's been tipped, upside down. And here's this beautiful 3-year-old that didn't ask for any of this. And once again, I find myself in a situation where I'm homeless, and what am I going to do at this point? And now I have this beautiful child that I need to take care of. So it just was really bad. But at that time, I can honestly say the people in recovery truly held me up. But it was like they were, God with skin on, for lack of a better term, and they just really rallied around us and were there for us 100%. And so I started going to church, because it was like, either I'm going to get a better connection with God and have a conscious contact with him every single day, or else I'm going to be a drug addict again, and my daughter's going to grow up with a mother like that. And so I had a very big decision to make, and there was a huge fork in the road, because all I wanted to do at that time was use. So I immediately went into therapy, and I started going to church and started trying to rebuild my life. And I was just so broken again, in sobriety, this time with someone that was depending on me. So Nevaeh is my saving grace. The Lord gave her to me for a multitude of reasons, but I think number one is to help me stay sober.